Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Kendrick. Hello, everybody. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. A little bit of an update. I just recently went to the doctor on Monday, and for those of you who have been listening to me, you would know that I've been dealing with some issues regarding like my throat and my nose and everything. My nose has been draining a lot. It feels like I have like almost a phlegm buildup in my throat, but when I try to clear my throat, nothing clears, but the feeling stays there. I recently went to the doctor, and they believe that they know what is wrong. So I am currently on a nasal spray along with a few other things, and I'm going to be on this for about a month, and then call back, see how things are going, see if the issue has cleared up. Apparently it's something common for people up in the Northwest, so I don't know, I guess that's kind of refreshing to hear, but it doesn't feel like it's life-threatening. I'm not panicking or anything. I trust the medical professionals because I am not one. And I grew up believing that I should always be listening to the medical professionals. They know far, far more about the human body than I ever could. I don't go to Google for it because Google's just going to scare me, and I'm just going to start diagnosing myself with issues that I 100% don't have, and then the doctors just roll their eyes at me. So especially nowadays, I listen to the medical professionals. People, wear a mask. If you want sports, just wear a mask. It is not that difficult. But anyways, we got a few things I want to get into today. I want to talk about some college football, and the risk of the players coming back. I got some opinions on this. I've been thinking a lot about this. I want to get into Matt Lafleur because he made some comments, the Green Bay Packers head coach. He made some comments on Aaron Rodgers that I don't quite understand. Talked about Rodgers in my last podcast. We are going to continue the discussion. I want to get into Antonio Brown because Antonio Brown's punishment has obviously been laid down by the NFL. He has an 8-game suspension, and I have some thoughts about that. I've been taking a few days to get my thoughts totally together on this. And then I want to get into my top 10 most impactful opt-outs so far of the NFL offseason. But anyways, I want to go ahead and start with this. So Jordan Reed, who was a very, very talented tight end, most recently played in Washington. He now signed a 1-year deal with the Niners that is heavily incentive-based because he can't stay healthy. Jordan Reed is a phenomenal talent. There has never been any dispute about his talent. He is one of the, when he's healthy and right, he is one of the top 5 best tight ends in the NFL. I mean, you would go, at this point, you probably go like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and then maybe you say like Zach Ertz, and then after that, it's probably Jordan Reed. You know, he's like discount Travis Kelce. He's a great receiver. I don't think really known for being the pass blocker or the run blocker or anything like that, but he is an outstanding pass catcher. He is very, very quick for his size, has great hands. He's made spectacular catches in his career. The problem with Jordan Reed is that he just can't stay healthy. If we just go back to 2013, all right, and we'll just go from 2013 to now, here are the games he has played every single season and kind of how that season's ended for him. So, 9 games and IR. 11 games, 14 games, 12 games went to the Pro Bowl, 6 games went on IR, 13 games went on IR, and then of course in 2019, 0 games was on the IR. He is an outstanding talent. That has never been up for debate. But the thing is, the dude can't stay healthy. And it's not knee issues, it's not arm issues, it's not foot issues, it's this dude's head. Jordan Reed has had multiple documented concussions in his career. And it seems like it's gotten to the point where whenever he takes a hit to his head, he has a concussion. It's just, this is not, some people have some knee issues where they just continually have to get the knee scoped and they need to get it cleaned out and everything and get things fixed up. And of course, over time, it does really destroy your knee, and eventually it can just make your knee immobile, can cause real bad arthritis. But it's not something where it's like, oh, well, you know what? I won't be able to function my everyday life because my knee hurts. Your brain is something completely different. If your brain goes, you kind of go. All right, you are your brain, right? And this is a serious matter. It's the same thing kind of when I talked about Alex Smith and his injury. My thing with Alex Smith is he's coming off of a devastating leg injury that almost caused him to lose his leg. I saw the documentary about it. What he's had to do to come back and the kind of stress that put on his wife, his family in general is insane. And Alex Smith, my argument is he's made, at least in NFL contracts alone, about $200 million. And obviously assuming he's saved well. He's made all that. He's in his late 30s. 35, 36 years old, something like that. I mean, the guy, he should retire. He's got a family, a wonderful family. He's got great wealth. I mean, I just think it is around the time for him to go ahead and make a decision to retire. And it can be tough, right? It can be tough to give up what you love. It can be tough to call it quits on your career, especially if you feel like you have more to offer. If you don't want to go out the way you did, right? Does Alex Smith want the last image of him to be him laying on the field getting carted off? Probably not. Does Jordan Reed want the last image of him on a field to be him back in 2018? Or him sitting on the sidelines in 2019. I don't even know if he was sitting on the sidelines in 2019 or not. I just know I haven't seen him play in a year. So, I think that Jordan Reed has to make a really, really tough decision. And sometimes the right choice isn't the choice that makes you the happiest. The right choice, I think, for Alex Smith is to retire. Would it make him the happiest in the short term? Probably not. Would it maybe leave him feeling empty in the future? It could. But if he's healthy and he gets to enjoy the time with his family, should it be worth it? In my mind, yeah, it should probably make up for it. Jordan Reed, he should keep his brain. His brain already, from all the concussions he's had, I'd have to imagine there's already some issues there. If he takes one more hit, that could be it. If he retires, right now, is it necessarily going to make him the happiest? Probably not. It would probably really hurt him for a bit. You're giving up your love. But if it means that you can actually continue to live your life and have a family and be there for your family, should that mean something? I would think so. But then again, I'm not him. I'm just a sports guy. I'm just talking about it. I just have my opinion of it, and at the end of the day, my opinion, though, does not really matter when it comes to Alex Smith or Jordan Reed. All I'm doing is just saying what I think, but at the end of the day, the only opinions that should matter to them are their own and the people close to them. That's really all that should matter, and they should, at the end of the day, do what is best for them. But no matter what, it comes down to making a tough decision. Jordan Reed, I'm sure he knows his health concerns, and he made a tough decision. Alex Smith, I'm sure he knows his health concerns, and he makes a tough decision. And now to transition this into a bit of COVID talk. Any player that decides to opt out, whether it be in the NFL or college, they're making a tough decision. Some of it is easy for these guys to make because they are higher risk. For some of these guys, they might not necessarily be higher risk, but they have family, they have a child to look after. And then for some of these guys, they just don't want to risk getting it themselves. It is plain and simple. They're like, I don't want to risk getting this. I don't want to see what it's going to do to me, right? Von Miller, he came out, he talked about his experience with it. There was a report came out, he almost considered opting out because of what COVID already did to him. And he has asthma. He is at high risk for this thing. Or at least, well, not necessarily high, but if he gets it, it can affect him way more. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if asthma makes you more high risk. I might be misinformed on that. So don't hold me to that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just if you do get it and you have asthma, yeah, that's going to mess with you a lot worse. And it did for Von Miller, but Von Miller, he was able to beat it and overcome it, thankfully. But with college football, right, I think college football, they should really be looking at what's going on in baseball, and it's the same thing with the NFL. They should really be looking at what's going on in baseball, because baseball, unlike the NBA, didn't do a bubble. And the Marlins have had a breakout. I think the Cardinals have had a breakout. Other players are getting infected. I mean, it is starting to cause a lot of games to be postponed, because these guys have to now go through a quarantine period, and you got to figure out who else have they been in contact with, who else have they talked to, who else have they touched. And it came down to the irresponsibility of some of these players not abiding by the rules and getting a bit too careless. I think Aaron Rodgers came out and he talked about it, and he said that some of these players got a bit too lackadaisical with it. They let their guard down. They didn't wear the mask when they should have been. And sure enough, all of a sudden you got like 20 people in the Marlins that got it. And I think the report, there was like 5+ people with the Cardinals that got it. It's not good. That is the biggest fear of baseball, was for this to cause a gigantic breakout. In the NBA, of course, they have a bubble. They've been quarantining. They've taken it very seriously. There are no positive coronavirus cases in the NBA bubble. And when it comes to college football, not only are these guys facing the possibility of getting COVID, but they're also not getting paid. What they're doing is they're playing for, in some people's mind, they're playing for the scholarship, but what they're doing is they're playing with the hopes that they can maybe parlay this into a career in that respective sport, whether it be the NBA or the MLB or the NFL. They're hoping they can get into one of these big sports, especially in the NFL. Are there some players who are playing because it gives them a chance to have free college? Yes. But are a lot of these guys' goals to get into the NFL? Yes. And do a lot of them sniff it? No. Most of these guys won't even get a single phone call. The ones who do get the phone call, they better make the most of their time. And the ones who actually do manage to stick on the roster, they've just got something about them that has given them the ability to hold down a spot, or maybe to even get a starting job. But I think that we as viewers need to be very careful about how we go about talking to these college players or judging these college players who voice their concerns about playing this year. And I think at the moment there's 4 or 5 college players that have opted out for the season. To name two of the bigger ones, Caleb Farley, who is a cornerback at Virginia Tech. He was viewed as being a first-round pick in this upcoming NFL draft. He has elected to not play. He has elected to go ahead, spend this season basically training and to just prepare for the upcoming NFL draft. Another player, Rashad Bateman, who's a wide receiver from Minnesota, looked as being one of the top wide receivers in the country, a high pick this coming draft. He's going to do the same thing. He is just going to prepare this whole season for the upcoming NFL draft. And you can't blame him. I mean, we saw what happened. As soon as some of these campuses started to open up and they got players back into the building, Clemson had an outbreak of like 20+ people. Ohio State had an outbreak. Multiple campuses had these outbreaks. You got people out here throwing COVID parties. I mean, my goodness. There is a player, Trevez Moore. He is a player for LSU. And now, this tweet, it came across, this was posted on Monday. I don't know what it was a reply to, but it was applied to somebody's tweet, and I'm guessing they said something about how coronavirus isn't real, or it's not a big deal. I don't exactly know. But Trevez Moore replied to him and said, "Bro, the coronavirus is real. I was 255. Now I'm 229 because I lost my appetite and it's hard to eat, plus you can barely breathe. You can't smell food, you can't taste food or taste any liquids. Stay y'all butt in the house." So, there's a lot of people who have tried to argue saying that, these athletes, they don't really get affected by it. Young people, they don't really get affected by it. They're in the section of people that don't die from it, right? It's killing older people. It's killing, like, children it's killing those people. It's killing people who have a underlying health condition, who are more susceptible to get it, and if they do get it, it hits them harder, all that stuff, right? Leave the athletes alone. Let the athletes play. Well, Trevez Moore is saying, while it may not have killed him, he did damn near lose 30 pounds because he couldn't eat anymore. I have not had the coronavirus. I did get the swine flu when it came out, the first round of it, or whatever it was, and I remember I was floor-ridden. I wasn't bed-ridden, I was floor-ridden. I couldn't make it into my bed, and I had lost all of my appetite. I barely ate anything for like a week. It got to the point where after, 5 days went by and I had barely eaten anything, I was laying on the couch in pain, just all around my midsection, because my body was, I think, starving, but it didn't know how to handle it because I tried to eat food and it didn't taste good. I wanted to throw it back up. I think this is a big deal because if Trevez Moore is dealing with this, if he lost about 30 pounds, and this is you could say an elite athlete, this is a college level athlete, if he lost 30 pounds, how can this affect some of these other guys? Von Miller, I don't know what it really did to him. So some of the reports came out. He said he had trouble breathing at times, and it really scared him. He almost considered opting out. Of course, I've talked about this before. There was a guy, I believe that he was native to Washington, but there was a guy who was a trainer. You see his before and after photo. In one photo, he's jacked. He looks like he would be ready to train some people who are looking to get in shape. And in the next photo, after COVID, the dude, all of his muscle was gone. I think I compared it looks like one of those before and after photos of somebody who did drugs. I mean, he looked completely different. He looked like a completely different person. How this affects everybody is so different. And while these top of the line athletes, your JJ Watt, your Aaron Donald, your Julio Jones, while it could get to them and it might not necessarily kill them, it might not necessarily put them in a hospital, there is still the thing of how it affects your organs. There are people who've said it damages your heart, it damages your kidney, it damages your stomach, it damages your lungs. Even if you don't necessarily go to the hospital, you don't die, the long-lasting effects of it, they aren't necessarily consistent with everybody. Some people, it affects just different parts of them. These are kids going out there, playing a game, hoping for the chance to go and get into the NFL, and you're basically asking them to go out there, still play for free. Of course, the NCAA, they did pass that players can get a percentage of their jersey sales. But you're asking them to go out there, basically play for free. For probably no fans. It could even just be in their own conference. That's the way it's kind of heading at this point, with the Pac-12 demanding certain things from the NCAA, which are all very reasonable. COVID testing daily is an essential thing I think the NCAA should just already be on board with, but of course it all comes down to the money and if they want to spend it. It seems like it's going to be just by the conference, so the Big 12, the ACC, Big 10, all that stuff, Pac-12, they'll just play in conference. But you're asking them to risk getting COVID and you don't know how it's going to affect them? Trevez Moore is an elite athlete, plays at LSU. He lost 30 pounds during his time having COVID because he couldn't eat anything. We have to be very, very careful how we handle the criticizing of anybody who decides to opt out, whether it be for family reasons, whether it be for their own health reasons, whether it be just simply because, whether it be because they're at risk. I think anyone who's at risk and decides to opt out, there should be just no question that it makes perfectly fine sense for them. I'm kind of surprised that a guy like James Conner hasn't decided to opt out, and when he fought cancer for a few years. I'm kind of surprised he hasn't decided to opt out. He feels okay enough to play. Von Miller obviously has said he feels okay enough to play. But Trevez Moore should be a great example of a college athlete to look at and to see what it can do to you, even when you are a young athlete. COVID-19's real. Everybody can get it if they don't take the proper precautions, and I think that what the MLB has shown everybody is that a bubble is of the utmost importance. If your league doesn't have a bubble, I don't know how it's really going to survive, because you're asking the players in your league to be responsible, and as we've seen with baseball, the Marlins, guys weren't too responsible. They let their guard down. Some of these guys are way, way older than any of these college players. They are way more, you would believe they're more mature. How do you think that some of these 18, 19, 20-year-old college players are going to handle this virus? You're going to tell me that they're going to be, at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they're going to be alert of all of their surroundings? Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. And there's no bubble? Oh, dear God. Oh, there's going to be an outbreak somewhere. There's going to be another outbreak. All of a sudden, there's going to be 50 people on a team, probably all testing positive, and then they're going to get shut down, and then it's probably going to have a trickle-down effect to the rest of the I don't even know. I just don't think it'd be pretty. I think the NFL and college football, they should both effective immediately be working on some kind of a bubble solution. I'm not talking about one giant bubble. I'm saying if you have to split them across the country, just make multiple individual bubbles. And I know it's going to cost a lot of money, but if you want the season to actually continue and you want it to be as successful as the NBA's is right now, and that's kind of that thing where the NBA, they're lucky they have less people to worry about than these other sports. But if they want it to be successful and they want it to go by without a stop in the road, then they are going to want to really consider doing a bubble. And I know it's going to cost a lot of money, and I'm sure they don't want to spend any of that money, so I'm sure it's not going to happen. The NFL, they only recently agreed to daily COVID testing. I mean, my God, the NFLPA, they had the players, they had to do a coordinated attack on Twitter to get it. This is a big deal. COVID's real, wear a mask. These sports, I think they should all be in a bubble. Is it realistic at this point? No. But I think that leads me to believe that there is a real chance that football is just not going to, it's not going to be played out the way that we would all like it to be. I could definitely see there being a stoppage at some point in time due to an outbreak. Anyways, coming up next, Matt Lafleur made some comments about Aaron Rodgers. I found them to be very, very interesting. We're going to get into that coming up next.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we talked about some college football, talked about basically the risks of these players coming back to do a season with COVID-19 being what it is. I just don't know if it's worth it, and I especially don't know if it's worth it if there is not a bubble. These guys are not paid. They are doing this for free, and I just don't necessarily think it's worth it. I think we all need to be very, very careful about who we judge and who we criticize during this time, because any player that decides to opt out, it is completely within their rights, and more than often, I think that it's reasonable to do so. Who are we to judge what they do with their lives? Anyways, So, in my last podcast, I talked about Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, because Aaron Rodgers came out, and he was quoted in basically saying that he wasn't happy when the Packers drafted Jordan Love, that he went and he got what he called he poured himself 4 fingers of tequila, because it was going to be one of those nights, and that he just knows that this is a business, and that he knows his time with the Packers is going to be coming here to an end, and that he most likely does not see himself retiring as a Packer. You know, he sees how this is. He knows how these teams like to operate. They usually like to play these quarterbacks while they're on their rookie deal sooner rather than later. That way they can afford more pieces to surround them with, and they can try and really maximize that window before they're paying anybody any extreme money. Well, at the moment, they're paying Aaron Rodgers a lot. They're paying him a lot for this year, and I believe next year they're going to be paying him a ton of money. It's only after the next season that they can really get out from underneath this contract. But Matt Lafleur, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, he spoke to the media on Sunday, and during his media session, of course, they asked him about Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be an ongoing theme. They're going to ask him throughout the season, especially if at some point in time Green Bay struggles or Aaron Rodgers doesn't look the same. They will ask him about Jordan Love, and he's going to need to be ready to answer these questions, but they asked him about Aaron Rodgers, about what he sees for his future in Green Bay, and he said, Aaron Rodgers is our quarterback, and I see him here for a really long time. Now, I don't know what is his definition of a really long time. Is a year, is a season and a half? Is that considered a long time? Is 365 days? I mean, that's a lot of days. Is that considered a long time? I don't really know what he means by there for a long time. But assuming that what he means is he expects to see Rodgers there for the next few years, why would you draft Jordan Love? What you're telling me, either Matt Lafleur went out there and blatantly lied to the media, or drafting Jordan Love was one of the most idiotic moves that has ever been made by a team. Because if you're telling me that you guys believe in Aaron Rodgers this much to where you could see him being there for the next few years, why would you even draft a quarterback? So that you could maybe flip him in 3 seasons into another first-round pick or something. You can build the hype above him enough. There'll be enough tape of him in the preseason, if the preseason even comes back. Let's be very clear about that. But if he maybe gets a few snaps in the game, the hype is still there, and so a team maybe wants to trade for him, what is the point? That doesn't make any sense to me. Aaron Rodgers did Matt Lafleur and the general manager and Green Bay Nation a service by coming out and saying that he can see that he's probably not going to retire there, that it is a business, and that there's a reason why they drafted Jordan Love, and that even though he doesn't like it, he's not going to just surrender his job. Jordan Love is going to have to win his job, or Green Bay is essentially, they're going to have to push him out the back door. Actually, on Monday, Rodgers, he also spoke to the media again. He did an interview, and he said that if he retires on his own watch in Green Bay, then all is well. But obviously, if Green Bay wants to move on before he's done playing, then they'll be in an impasse, and that is when the issue will come up, and that's when they're going to figure out what it is that they're going to do. Are they going to just release him and then let him go and pick whatever team he wants to go to? Are they going to trade him, and what team is going to want Aaron Rodgers at that price tag? Are they gonna want him, assuming he's there for, let's just say, 2 more years? Are they gonna, who wants to trade for a 38, 39-year-old quarterback? I don't know who would do that. So I would assume they'd probably just go ahead and release him. I believe in 2 seasons is when he wouldn't have any more guaranteed money on his contract, or that's just when the cap hit would be at its lowest. So I don't exactly know the fine details of his contract and everything like that. But I really don't understand Matt Lafleur's comments. And this is something that a lot of teams do. To give you guys a few other examples, Jamal Adams, the Jets GM, said that they are going to get an extension done for Jamal Adams. They love Jamal Adams. They see him being a Jet for a long time. They want him to stay, all this stuff. And they traded him. The Jaguars with Ramsey. They said they love Jalen Ramsey. They want him to be a member of the Jags for a long time. It's not every day that you get an elite shutdown corner. They love Ramsey, they want to keep him, and they traded him. And this is the way it is all the time. I mean, really. This is the way it is all the frickin' time. Every GM, every head coach, you love the player, you want to see them stay, and then you trade them. Khalil Mack, even with the Raiders. Now, John Gruden, he made some very, very interesting comments, but the thing that Gruden and the Raiders were saying is that they love Khalil Mack, and they want to see him be there for his whole career, and eventually, they traded him. That is just what happens in this business, and I've never quite understood it. See, I'm a person who's always valued honesty. That's just me, though. I've always valued honesty. So even if the honesty isn't necessarily what I want to hear, like as in it's not going to make me the happiest, even though it might lower my mood, I would prefer that you just go ahead and be honest with me and tell me what's up, right? Even when it comes to, do you want to hear the good news or the bad news? I would rather hear the bad news first, because at least then after that, if you tell me the good news, it could cheer me up. I don't want to be cheered up and then bummed out, okay? I'd rather be bummed out and then cheered up. That's just me, though. But I look at, Matt Lafleur's comments, and when I see that, Aaron Rodgers is a smart guy. Aaron Rodgers has always been a bit more woke than your average NFL quarterback. While a lot of other quarterbacks, they keep it very, very PC, and they're very careful about all the things that they say. Aaron Rodgers has never been afraid to come out and say what he thinks. It's very, very public, the dispute that he has with his family. He was very, very public about his opinion when it came to the kneeling during the anthem, during a time when it was not very popular to do so, and he's a white quarterback. Let's also go ahead and let's tell it like it is. He's a white quarterback who came out and said, kneeling during the anthem is not a sign of disrespect. That was a great thing that he did. But Matt Lafleur's comments, you don't need to say it. When Aaron Rodgers came out and said that he acknowledges his time with Green Bay is going to come to an end sooner rather than later, because he knows the history of young quarterbacks playing in their first year, or even just playing in general within their rookie deal. He knows the history of it. So he knows that he's probably going to get booted out the door. As soon as he said that, all Matt Lafleur had to do was just come out and just keep it, keep it honest. Keep it honest, but don't outright lie to all of us and Aaron Rodgers. You guys do not see him being there for the next few years. That's why you drafted Jordan Love. That's why you traded up to get Jordan Love, because you guys didn't see him being there for a long time. If you did, you wouldn't have traded up to get him, and you would have actually probably drafted a wide receiver or something to help Aaron Rodgers out, but you didn't. You're depending on Devontae Adams and Alan Lazard with the opt-out of Devin Funchess. Who you fooling? Who do you think you're fooling? I don't know if this was that Matt Lafleur just wasn't ready or sure how to answer the question, because I guess I can look at it this way. It maybe doesn't look the best if someone says, how do you see Aaron Rodgers' future with the team? And he says, well, we'll reevaluate it after the season. I mean, I can see that. That doesn't look that great. You're not putting in too much confidence into Aaron Rodgers. So, then what is his motivation to go out there and play well? In my opinion, I think this could go one of two ways. I think that either Jordan Love is going to play this next season, and that they are just going to eat the dead money or whatever it is, and they're just going to move on from Aaron Rodgers because they want to make the most of his window, especially if he makes good progression. Because the thing with Patrick Mahomes, you remember, he was making really, really good progressions throughout the season. Andy Reid really, really liked him. Then you got to see him in the final game of the season, and although he didn't do anything spectacular against Denver, they won the game. He made a couple plays for them, and he showed a little bit of what he could do, enough for Andy Reid to go, all right, yeah, we're going to go ahead and move off of Alex Smith. If Jordan Love makes good progressions, you can't tell me that they won't just move off of Aaron Rodgers. I think either that could happen, or Aaron Rodgers will play in Green Bay as long as he's performing at a high level. So I think if Aaron Rodgers has another similar season to this past year, I could definitely see them moving off of him. Because he was the definition of a game manager. He did not, I don't care what anyone says, he did not look the same. He just didn't. He doesn't look like he has the same mobility that he once had. While he can still make some ridiculous throws, he seems to throw the ball out of bounds a lot more. He just gets rid of it a lot more. There aren't so many of the spectacular plays where he's keeping the play alive for 10, 8 seconds as he's moving around and evading guys. And some of it, I'm sure, has to do with his weapons. Obviously, he doesn't have the connection with, I think, any of these receivers like he had with Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb isn't there anymore, and he's a great receiver. He just couldn't stay healthy. Devontae Adams obviously is a stud, and he has a great rapport with him. But everyone else, not really. He does like Allen Lazard, by all accounts. He's had very, very glowing things to say about Allen Lazard. But Allen Lazard hasn't really done anything in his career. I don't even know who Green Bay's starting tight end is this season. They let, they let Jared Cook go after the one season he had with Rodgers, and I thought that looked kind of dumb. Obviously, they brought in Jimmy Graham. I don't really know why they brought in Jimmy Graham. Now the Bears have him. Again, I don't know. Jimmy Graham, he's just fooling people into thinking that he's some elite tight end, because he hasn't been one since he left the Saints. But to kind of get back into this whole young quarterback thing and everything, right? So let's just kind of go to some of the younger quarterbacks in the league, and let's look and see what exactly was said about them when they were drafted, who was on the team, all that stuff. So let's just go with Jared Goff. You had Case Keenum up there and Sean Mannion, I believe. And they drafted Jared Goff, and they had no plans to start him originally. Remember, it was Case Keenum's team. It was his team to lose, and sure enough, he lost it pretty quickly because the Rams looked awful, and then, Goff went in and he looked awful, and it turns out it was just because of Jeff Fisher that these guys looked awful, and since then, obviously, Jared Goff, he got a gigantic contract and everything, but he wasn't supposed to play. Carson Wentz wasn't supposed to play, it was supposed to be Sam Bradford, and then one day they traded Sam Bradford to the Vikings, and they started Carson Wentz. Baker Mayfield, this is well documented. Hugh Jackson religiously said, Taylor is the quarterback of this team, we're gonna start with Taylor, I'm riding with Taylor, and then what was it, after 3 games or whatever, Baker Mayfield came in, they never looked back. Josh Allen with the Bills, he got drafted there, they had no plans to start him, originally they didn't, and then eventually they benched their starter, Josh Allen came in, his rookie season, a lot of these guys, this was during their rookie season, he came in and he played. It's the same thing, Darnold, they said that, McCown's going to be the starter. As the season drew closer and closer, the reports started coming out that they really like Sam Darnold. They just aren't announcing he's the starter, and eventually they finally announced him as the starter. Right now with Miami, they're trying to figure out if they want to start Tua. If he's healthy, hey, you might as well. There's no better experience than just getting experience. Now, if he were to sit, would I think it's a bad choice? No, not really. We saw what it did for Mahomes. Mahomes, he sat basically the whole season until the final game, and then he played. And obviously Mahomes, that next season, he won the MVP. They could do a similar thing like that with Tua. Maybe have him sit out for half of the year, learn under Fitzpatrick, come in. The point I'm trying to make is just, every single team says this. It's just, I don't know what it is. It's like, it's PC talk, it's coach talk, it's GM talk, they all say it. But the fact of the matter is, especially when it comes to quarterback, these teams have shown they would much rather start the younger guy than to start the younger, inexpensive guy. I should put it that way. To start the more inexpensive guy than to go with their high-paid starter. Now, to be fair, none of the other teams had Aaron Rodgers, right? The Bears didn't have Aaron Rodgers, the Bills didn't, the Rams didn't, none of these teams had Aaron Rodgers. So, if you look at, in New England, right, they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo in the second round, Bill Belichick, did he want to trade Tom Brady, bring Jimmy G in? They traded away Jimmy G for a second round pick, which in hindsight, that was a serious mistake. They really should have probably traded him for a first round pick or held out for more, maybe a player in return, whatever it might have been. But they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo because Brady was still performing at enough of a level, and by all accounts, Mr. Kraft stepped in and said, you are not trading him. In Green Bay's case, there isn't an owner to come out and say, hey, Aaron Rodgers is our guy, we're not going to trade him. You trade away Jordan Love. There's no owner to say that. He would have to depend on like the GM and the coach to say it, and I don't think either of them are going to say it. Maybe the fans could get up and riot and say, we aren't going to attend a game if you guys get rid of Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think that would happen. I just think how this is going to end is the same way a lot of these other the way a lot of these other divorces end. I think it could end really, really ugly. Rodgers has gone on record saying he wants to play into his 40s, while his play on the field hasn't necessarily shown. It seems like he's aged a bit quickly. So while it doesn't necessarily show, at least the moment, like he's going to be playing into his 40s, again, if he comes back this season and he's able to kind of let it rip a bit more, he's able to look like the Aaron Rodgers of old, hey, he might do it. And would Green Bay, though, keep him around? History shows probably not. I just don't know if they would be willing to pass up the opportunity to play Jordan Love and to play a cheaper quarterback than to keep Aaron Rodgers. I just don't know. Even though Aaron Rodgers is a Hall of Famer and probably will be known as the greatest Packer of all time, the greatest Packer quarterback of all time, I just don't know if they'll do it. Anyways, coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about Antonio Brown and what has been going on with him as of recent with the NFL, especially as it pertains to his eligibility to play in the NFL. And stay tuned, my final topic of the day, I'm going to give you guys my top 10 opt-outs, my top 10 most impactful opt-outs of this NFL offseason so far. Stay tuned, that coming later.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment, we talked a little bit about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Matt Lafleur made some comments that I just don't quite understand. How are you going to tell the media and tell everybody else that you plan to see Aaron Rodgers here for a long time when you just drafted Jordan Love? I'm sorry, that's just... How dumb do you think that we all are? That's insulting our intelligence to say such a thing when we all know that either after this season or the next season, he is going to be gone. There is no way in hell you drafted Jordan Love just to have him sit on the bench for 3 years or 4 years, only to lose him to free agency or to just trade him. That would be, that would just be ridiculous. Anyways, Antonio Brown. So, back when I was working at Chaos Radio, which is a radio station in Olympia, I did quite a few topics about Antonio Brown. I talked about him quite often because while I was doing it, it was at the height, I guess, of the Antonio Brown drama. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to give you a quick overview of everything that was happening with Antonio Brown. So, he ended up getting traded from the Steelers for basically nothing over to the Raiders. He then got cut by the Raiders after failing to basically do anything. He quit on the team. Part of it had to do with the fact that they wouldn't let the NFL wouldn't let him use his the helmet that he loves the most anymore. Part of it had to do with the fact that he burned his feet when doing a cryotherapy chamber. Part of it had to do with the fact that he just has a massive ego and thinks he should be getting everything that he wants, but it's just not the way it works with these teams. He got away with it for so long with the Steelers that they finally moved on from him and had enough of it, and he thought he could do the same thing with the Raiders, but the Raiders, they held his feet to the fire, so to speak, and he quit on the Raiders and ultimately forced their hand into cutting him. On top of this, he has a sexual assault allegation against him, or a sexual misconduct allegation against him, as well as a second one that came at a later date, involving, I believe, a painter that came into his house to do a mural, and he was walking around the house in a towel, I think is what I picked from it. So I don't quite understand that one, but nonetheless, I mean, he went to New England then, and he played a game there this last season, and it looked like it could be really dangerous, looked like it could be really good, and then that ended up not lasting, and the Patriots cut him, basically due to conduct detrimental to the team, because some text messages of his got out where he insulted the mother of his kids, I believe, and basically called him a whole bunch of names and talked about how she's a gold digger. And I mean, there's an assault allegation against him. He assaulted a guy who was supposed to be helping him move. He berated the police on the video, screaming obscenities at them. Did the same thing to the mother of his children. I mean, Antonio Brown was just doing everything. It was so amazing to watch this guy go from superstar NFL wide receiver, regarded as one of the best in league history, to dude couldn't even get on a team. Now, part of it had to do with the fact that he did have these allegations against them, and we're still waiting to see how this is going to go. But the fact stands that this guy, they always talk about how in the NFL, there are guys who have killed people because they crashed their car into somebody else and they died. There have been guys who have gotten back in the league after being accused of domestic violence, or even being caught on camera having committed the domestic violence, i.e. a guy like Kareem Hunt or a guy like Greg Hardy, these kind of guys. If you have talent, you get back on a team. Antonio Brown has more talent than all of these guys, and he has not been able to get back on the team. Now, his punishment got handed down a couple days ago, and it is that he is going to be suspended for the first 8 games of this coming NFL season. Whether he's on a team or not, he will miss the first 8 games of the season. Once the first 8 games go by, he is free to play. And there have been 2 teams that have been named as teams that could possibly look to sign him, that being the Seahawks and the Ravens. Let me go ahead and say very, very quickly, I think if he signed with the Ravens, that would be a terrible idea. Lamar Jackson, that offense is already based around the run game. Lamar Jackson, of course, he's going to get his carries. Mark Ingram's going to get his carries. Gus Edwards is going to get his carries. And whoever else is going to get a carry, they throw the ball, sometimes 20 times a game, and it's not like Lamar Jackson is completing all of his passes. So you're going to tell me you're going to stick this over-the-top, demanding personality in Antonio Brown, who has already shown he is much more about him than he is about team. Whether he likes whether he says different or not. That is what he is. He is about him before he is about team. He showed it in Oakland. He showed it on numerous occasions with the Steelers. It's just the Steelers did a great job of hiding it, and they did a great job of, spinning it, trying to make it seem like Antonio Brown was a better guy than he is. I think Matt Tomlin, he said, he hasn't gone into the specifics, but he has come out and he said, you don't even know how much we hid. We hid so much from the media. Antonio Brown being late to meetings, whatever it might be, he is about him. There's a guy, Ryan Clark, who works for ESPN. He's a former Steeler defensive back. Ryan Clark was on record saying that when he was with the Steelers, he was there when Antonio Brown was still on his rookie deal. And he could see Antonio Brown's ego. That he knew how good he was. He knew he was going to get paid. And what they offered, I think they offered Mike Wallace a deal that he didn't accept. So then they gave it to Antonio Brown. So all of a sudden he had this big contract. And Ryan Clark said that in practice, a guy would touch him and he'd freak out. And he'd go, "Don't touch me. I'm the future of this team. How dare you put your hands on me? Do you know who I am?" And he told us, if you pay this guy, you're going to make a monster. And that is exactly what happened. Antonio Brown became a monster. If anyone thinks I'm overblowing this, literally just go online and go look up everything that Antonio Brown did last summer. It was insanity. He alienated so many people. And while there are still players that come out and they publicly say they love Antonio Brown and that he's still a dog and they'd still play with him any day, man, I just don't know. I especially don't know when it's a younger quarterback. They always say that when you have a younger quarterback, you shouldn't have a diva wide receiver because they're going to demand the ball, and the younger quarterback is more likely to look up to the veteran and listen to the veteran, so then they're going to force some passes that probably shouldn't be thrown, and it's going to lead to a pick or a bad play, whatever it might be. I think that it could really backfire if he went to the Ravens. The Ravens already don't necessarily throw it enough. I think their leading receiver was like Mark Andrews, and I think Marquise Brown was their leading wide receiver. I think he had like 800, close to 900 yards and 60, 70 catches or so, something like that. So they just don't throw the football enough. And I would not want to see Lamar Jackson start to change his game because of Antonio Brown. There was a game with Pittsburgh, not last season, but I think the season prior, and where Antonio Brown, he had a game where he didn't have a great performance. He didn't really get his catches. I think Juju got more of the targets or whatever, and after that game, Antonio Brown went public saying he needs more balls thrown his way. He wants more targets. And the next game, Ben Roethlisberger threw him like 20 passes. And they lost the game. It was to the detriment of the team. I don't know why Ben did it. I don't know if he just did it to make a point or what it was. But after that game, you know what we didn't hear? Antonio Brown complain about his targets. Didn't hear him complain about it. We've seen him flip water coolers on the sideline. I mean, he is a him guy, and he's not about the team. That is just blatantly clear to see from the sideline, from the TV, if you've just paid attention to sports at all. Now, as for Seattle, if he was to go to Seattle, I would be concerned about how that would affect DK Metcalf, if anybody. Tyler Lockett, he is who he is. He's a great receiver. I think, he and Russell just have a connection, and I don't think it would really affect Tyler Lockett. Would it limit, like, what Tyler Lockett's targets could be? It could. It could also increase them, because then the pressure would immediately go over towards Antonio Brown's side of the field, and Lockett would get more single coverage, things like that. But my concern would be about how it would affect, if anybody, DK. Because Antonio Brown would, I would assume, take DK's spot, unless they put Brown in the slot or something. And he could be taking targets away that would really go towards DK Metcalf's development. But as for Russell Wilson, oh hell no. Oh god no. He's not telling Russell anything. Russell Wilson is a champion, he's a winner, he is class personified. He's never had a misstep in his career. The worst misstep in Russell Wilson's career was him throwing the pick that ended the game against the Patriots. That is his worst misstep in his career. Russell Wilson, I believe that Pete Carroll, and the culture that they have put in that team, I believe that they could harness Antonio Brown. And I know that probably sounds really, really weird to say, but I believe they could take Antonio Brown and make it work. I believe Antonio Brown would be in a strong locker room with a good player's head coach, a quarterback that is all about getting buddy with all of his teammates. And yeah, I think it could work. I don't see him pushing around Russell Wilson. I don't see him intimidating Russell into making him throw him 10, 15 balls every single game. Seattle themselves are a team that does like to run the football first. Even though Russell Wilson made some noise this offseason about how he wants their offense to look more like Patrick Mahomes, I have no reason to believe it's going to look very different. It's not like they made any huge draft or any big free agent moves to make me think they're going to change. But if they grabbed Antonio Brown, do I think that he could survive in that system with that culture around him? I do. Would I want to possibly see it happen, though? Not really. I want to see Russell Wilson with a top receiver one of these days. I want to see him have a top 5 receiver, a Julio Jones, a DeAndre Hopkins, a Michael Thomas level receiver. I'd love to see it. But I don't want to see it with Antonio Brown. That's just me. I just don't think his personality is good. And also, why would anyone want, a question, why would anybody want him on their team? Even with all of his talent. The Steelers still moved off of him. The Raiders still cut him. And New England still cut him. Because he quit. He quit on the Steelers. He quit on the Raiders. The Patriots, they went ahead and just quit on him. Why would you want a guy who was so about himself that he would quit on his team because of a helmet? Because he would quit on his team because he can't come into meetings late. Why would you want that around your locker room? Why would you want that around your younger players? That doesn't make any sense. So, look, if you could separate Antonio Brown, if you could just bring in the football side of him, that sounds outstanding. That is an elite, one of the greatest talents ever, and I'm sure every team would love to use that, but unfortunately, you can't just bring the football side of him. If you bring in Antonio Brown, you're bringing all of him. You can hope that he has everything under control. The thing is, though, he still even has his cases to be decided. Right? I mean, the NFL, they gave their punishment. The actual cases themselves have not been finished. There is still the pending lawsuit over his head. That still hasn't been situated yet. So, I just don't know. At this point in time, I would say more trouble than he's worth. But, hey, he would be a great grab to a team, especially if you could get him under control. If you can get just the football side of him out and you could keep all the other stuff under wraps, I guess, go ahead and grab him. But for the Ravens, the Seahawks, they both have really good things going for them. I don't know if it's worth it. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day, I'm going to give you guys my top 10 most impactful opt-outs of the NFL offseason. That coming up next. Stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, final segment of the day. My top 10 most impactful opt-outs of the NFL offseason. So players, they ended up getting the deadline extended to Thursday, 4 p.m., I believe. So players had until then to go ahead and decide whether or not they wanted to play the season. If players opted out just for personal reasons, they just didn't want to play or whatever it was, then they ended up getting $150,000, and players that opted out because of an actual actual health reason that they had, they got $350,000, I believe. So either way, I mean, a good chunk of money, but not anywhere near some of the actual salaries that these guys were supposed to get from their NFL contracts. Some of these guys were due to make, $9 million, $5 million, $10 million in some cases, and they just completely forgoed it because they simply didn't want to risk it. And I've said earlier in this podcast, I think we have to be very, very careful about anybody that we judge. Everyone has their reason for wanting to opt out or to not play. And I think it just all falls onto the individual. Some people aren't as afraid of COVID. Some people are a bit more concerned about COVID, maybe not necessarily for them, but because of who it is that they could give it to, family members, all that stuff. So I just think it's very, very, it's a very touchy subject when people just go out here saying, oh, these NFL players are just overreacting, they should just get out there and play. I don't necessarily agree with that, right? I mean, what was it, the NCAA, they canceled like all Division II and Division III championships or whatever. There are conferences that have completely canceled their season. I forgot the name of the college, but the college has completely canceled their entire season. There will be no football at the school. I think maybe a few schools have done that. It just all depends. Some are saying it's for safety reasons. Some are saying it's for money reasons. I'd say it's probably for money reasons more on behalf of the NCAA, but that is just me. As for some of these schools that are actually canceling their whole seasons, I would say they're probably looking at it more from a safety standpoint of all their students, not just their student athletes. And it's very, very unfortunate, but this is just the world that we live in right now. Anyways, so I think north of 60 players in the NFL ended up opting out this offseason. And I know that Devin McCourty did not like the fact that the NFL even extended the deadline. He thought that was just giving players more time to opt out, and he didn't like that. He thought that these players should have had to stick with, the original deadline. If you're gonna opt out, do it then. You don't need more time to think about it. But some players ended up needing a bit more time to think about it, and after the original deadline passed, more players did start opting out. So what I did is I looked at all the players, at least at the moment, that had decided to opt out, and I decided to do a ranking of the ones that I thought were the most impactful. So we're going to go from 10 down to 1, 10 of course being the one that I think is impactful, but of the 10, the least impactful, and we're going to start from there. So at number 10, I have Eddie Goldman of the Bears. Now Eddie Goldman is one of their big D tackles. He's on that D line with Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, who's an absolute monster. Both those guys are absolute monsters. Eddie Goldman is a great player end of himself, and he has decided to opt out due to health reasons. Very understandable, right? But I think Eddie Goldman, that's a big deal. This Bears defense, it still has a chance. It still has the pieces on it to be an elite defense, to still carry this team. They just need a bit more help from their offense. They cannot be on the field for as long as they are. Now, they got some more interesting players. I think Bilal Nichols, he had a promising rookie season, ended up getting an injury, kind of tapered off, but they're still high on him. So there's the chance that Bilal Nichols could still be a good contributor for them. But them losing Eddie Goldman does just lose another, you could say, maybe if not elite, another high-level interior pass rusher, a guy who's a good run stuffer, and it does just shorten your rotation. So I do think Eddie Goldman's loss is a big deal, though there are still some good players. As I said, Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks, the rest of the defense is still really, really good. But nonetheless, Eddie Goldman opting out is a big loss. So I have him at number 10. At number 9, and it's really difficult to rank these things, just so you guys know. It's really difficult to figure out, what is more important, because every team, every player is important to a team in their own way. But anyways, so at number 9, I have Marcus Gilbert. Now, Marcus Gilbert, he went with the Cardinals last season, and I don't think he played at all 2019. I think he got placed on IR, and then he re-signed with the team, and this season he's supposed to play, and he decided to opt out. Marcus Gilbert though he's older, he was a very, very consistently good offensive lineman for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he is now just gone, has a lot of experience. Again, though he is older, he was still very good. Even into the later years of his career, he showed he could still play at a very good level. And I think that's going to really affect Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, I think it was he and Deshaun Watson led the league in I don't know if there's a name for the stat, but basically quarterbacks running themselves into pressures and sacks. Meaning Kyler Murray, he would scramble, Deshaun Watson, he would scramble, and they try and extend the play, and they'd run right into a defender's area, and they'd either get sacked or they'd, get a pressure, whatever it might have been. Marcus Gilbert would have been a big addition to an already really bad offensive line, and he's just gone. He's just not going to be there. And so though they have DeAndre Hopkins, though they have some other interesting pieces on the offense to play with, Larry Fitzgerald obviously comes back another year of development for Christian Kirk. They franchise tagged Kenyon Drake. Them losing Marcus Gilbert, I do think is going to hurt them. Kyler Murray, he needs all the help he can get on that offensive line, though he can move, again, runs himself into a lot of pressures and sacks. He is a smaller guy. You do not want him taking a bad hit. So I have Marcus Gilbert at number 9. At number 8, CJ Mosley. CJ Mosley, this is incredible. This guy, he went from Baltimore, which no one saw him leaving Baltimore. Most people thought he was going to stay there for his career because they have a history, a tradition of great linebackers. Well, they let him go, and he goes to the Jets. The Jets make him one of the highest paid linebackers in the league, and he has played, I think, a game and a half for them, maybe. And now he's gonna essentially have missed his first 2 seasons with the Jets. The Jets have essentially paid him for nothing. And I think, I don't want to make a joke out of this because it is a big deal, right? CJ Mosley clearly doesn't feel like it's safe to play. But this is a huge blow to the Jets defense. Not only did they trade Jamal Adams, and yes, they got Bradley McDougall and some draft picks to help them out, but the draft picks aren't here yet. So they aren't doing anything, and Bradley McDougall, yes, he could play, but he isn't the caliber player that Jamal Adams is. And then you lose the guy who's supposed to be the anchor of one of the anchors of your defense in CJ Mosley. You already traded away Leonard Williams, who was it, their 3rd overall pick last year, the big defensive lineman. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I can't. And I think it's a shame because that guy's really, really funny. But he didn't really show much promise his rookie year. I think he had a flash, maybe 2 flashes or something the whole season. He was kind of irrelevant. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust or anything. It was 1 year. But losing CJ Mosley is a big deal. CJ Mosley is a good linebacker. He's solid in coverage. He's solid against the run. He's a great tackler. And I think that is a big blow to a Jets defense that is already lacking of good players. At number, what are we at? 6. No. 7. Yes. Number 7. I have Nate Solder of the Giants. And now, Nate Solder, he does get a lot of crap. A lot of people think that he was very much overpaid by the Giants, and I would agree with that. He was overpaid, but if you just go to his Pro Football Focus grades, this last season was a down year for him, but his other 3 years, he was in the 80s and the 70s. He's a solid left tackle, and Daniel Jones needs all the protection he can get. Daniel Jones has a serious fumble problem. That was very well documented this past season. I think he had 18 fumbles. I mean, he needs all the help he can get protection-wise, and you're now going to lose your starting left tackle. The team already had a pretty bad offensive line. The Giants have struggled for years to fix their offensive line, and you're now down your big free agent acquisition in Nate Solder. He's now just gone. So now, not only does Daniel Jones have to deal with having a new head coach, a new offensive system, and obviously having a truncated training camp, all that stuff, no preseason or anything. But now you're losing your big free agent left tackle. Again, is Nate Solder the best in the world? No, but he was their starter. There was no one starting over him. So I don't know. If people think that Nate Solder is as bad as he is, who was his backup, right? That was a big thing with Seattle, right? People in Seattle were going, why is Germain Ifedi still starting? Well, who's his backup? Because his backup can't beat him out. That's even worse to think about. So I have Nate Solder at number 7. I completely lost my ability to count right there. At number 6, I have Marquise Goodwin. Now, not a lot of people know who Marquise Goodwin is. Marquise Goodwin is a deep threat receiver, not necessarily a star or anything, but he's a solid NFL player. And the reason why I think he is a big loss for the Eagles is because the Eagles last season, what was their problem? They not only had no speed, because Deshaun Jackson got hurt instantly. They had no speed at receiver, and then they lost all their receivers. That's a big deal. The Eagles, of course, they went ahead and they drafted the receiver in the first round. Kind of shocked some people, who they decided to pick, but they drafted the first round receiver. I think they still do have Alshon Jeffrey. They do still have Deshaun Jackson. And, of course, they ended up trading for Marquise Goodwin from the Niners. And now Marquise Goodwin is gone. So, in essence, you're almost kind of back to the same receiving core, minus Nelson Aguilar. And the speed isn't necessarily there anymore. I mean, you're depending a lot on a rookie and an older Deshaun Jackson who can still run, he can still fly, but he is older, and an older Alshon Jeffrey. I think that this offense is once again going to be heavily leaning on Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert and whatever run game it is that they can assemble, maybe some trick plays with Jalen Hurts, whatever it is they plan to do. But I do think that Marquise Goodwin is a big loss. They needed speed on this team because they had none, and Marquise Goodwin is now gone. And he did it for a good reason. He has a new baby, and he already had to deal with a miscarriage before, which is terrible. So I think he even in his post he said that he's, for the first time in his life, he's picking family over football. He might have not said the football part, but he said for the first time he's picking his family first. And so I all the respect in the world to Marquise Goodwin. I hope everything is great. I hope that, he has a good season away from football and with his family. I hope he does. At number 5, I have Travis Benjamin, who ended up signing with the 49ers in the offseason. Now, Travis Benjamin, for his career, he's been more of a returner. He was like the number 1 receiver for the Browns one year when they had Johnny Manziel, had his best season. I think he had like 900 yards receiving, a couple touchdowns, everything. And then he ended up parlaying that into a contract with the Chargers, and then was with the Chargers. He was, again, though, still more of like a number 3. At times he filled in as the number 2 because Keenan Allen was dealing with some injuries. But again, he was just more of a returner. That is just more of who Travis Benjamin has been. But he has the speed to fit the 49ers and what they like to do. They like to do jet sweeps. They love to run with their receivers. They need speed on the outside so they can keep up with their running backs because of the kind of offense that they run. And Travis Benjamin decided to opt out. And I don't think it's just that. I think it's the fact that this offseason, they lost Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints. They lost Deebo Samuel to a to a broken foot. Now, Deebo Samuel, and the reports are that he should be fine around the time that the season does start. Like, he should be good to go. But you never know. If the feet especially can be really, really tricky. So, you never know how he's going to pan out. Dante Pettis, through 2 seasons, has been a bust. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust for his career, but through 2 seasons, he's been a bust. Now, they did draft Brandon Ayuk, who was a good receiver, first round receiver talent, in a deep receiving draft, by the way. And so they ended up drafting him, but you lose Sanders, you're not sure about what's going on with Deebo. Dante Pettis is really, if anything, a rotational receiver. I think they're going to be depending a lot on Trent Taylor to stay healthy, who's a really good slot receiver when he's on the field. I think that Travis Benjamin, he is a big loss. This team needs help at receiver. Of course, they have Kendrick Bourne. I think they brought him back on a 1-year deal. So I mean, they've got their options at receiver, but losing Benjamin, I think, is a bigger deal. Even though his career might not say that he's this big star or that he's the super productive player or anything, he fits, in my mind, what the 49ers would want to do. Jet sweeps, motion plays, pre-snap motion, returning, all that stuff. So I think at this point, their receivers they still have there, it'd be Deebo, Pettis, Ayuk, Bourne, and that's it. Of course, they still have George Kittle. They brought in Jordan Reed, obviously. I don't know. I just think it's a big loss. I think that they were going to use Travis Benjamin a lot, and now he's gone. At number 4, I have Marcus Cannon. Now, Marcus Cannon was one of the starting tackles of the Patriots, one of their more consistent offensive linemen. Doesn't really get a whole lot of pub, but he is a solid player, and he is gone. I believe that he's gone due to health reasons, so again, very understandable. But Marcus Cannon, this Patriots team has been decimated by the opt-outs. They have had the most opt-outs in the league. On top of that, they lose Tom Brady, you lose Gronk, you lose a bunch of players to free agency. I mean, this team has been They're going to have so many new starters on this team. They needed some cohesion, at least on the offense. And now they've lost one of their starting tackles. I don't know who's necessarily going to take over. I've seen some reports they might go ahead and try and grab, Marshall Newhouse, who has been there before. He's kind of bounced around the league, so you could get at least a good journeyman to fill in for Marcus Cannon for the season. But I just don't know how I feel about that. If it's Jarrett Stidham, he needs all the protection he can. He's filling in for Tom Brady. That's a lot of added pressure to a guy who's thrown 4 total passes in his career and has completed 1. And one of the balls he threw, I think, was a pick 6. And if it's Cam Newton, he's been dealing with injuries as of recent. All the running around, his play style in Carolina seems to have caught up with him at least a bit, to where he has been battling these knick-knack injuries every single season. So they want to keep the quarterback upright. They need some cohesion on the offense to an extent, and it just doesn't look like they're getting it. It just doesn't. So I think that them losing Marcus Cannon as well is a very, very big deal. I have him at number 4. At number 3, I have Jawan James of the Denver Broncos. Now, Jawan James, he only played, I think, 3 games last year for Denver, and he got hurt, was placed on IR, and his season was over. And then he decided to opt out this season. I think that's a big deal to the Broncos. The Broncos have been labeled as one of the teams that could potentially be the sleeper of the 2020 season. Drew Lock, obviously, didn't get to play his whole rookie season, but he did start eventually. I think he won 4 out of 5 games, 3 out of 4 out of 5, something like that. And he had his flashes. I mean, it wasn't anything super spectacular, but even then, Patrick Mahomes' first start wasn't necessarily spectacular. Not many quarterbacks have the most spectacular first starts in the career. Not everyone is Cam Newton, who goes out there and throws for 400 yards in his first game, right? Not many people get to do that. But Drew Lock, he did show promise. He did show the ability to maybe play in this league, but you look at their other tackle situation, you look at their offensive line in general, they've got some holes on it. Garrett Bowles, many people think has been the disappointment of a first round pick. He's been solid. He's not a great left tackle, but he's solid. He is passable. You can do better than him, but you can also do worse than him. And Jawan James, Miami didn't want to let him go. Miami would have loved to have kept him. He's a good, solid right tackle. And that's a position of need, especially when you have a young quarterback. You want them to have all the protection in the world. This was a big free agent that they acquired, and he's just gone. So now going into this coming season, Drew Lock, this was going to be his season as the starter. He has the same head coach. It's the same offensive system. This is one of the things I said that's going to benefit teams for this season. The teams that got to keep the same head coach, the same coordinators, that didn't change that kind of stuff because of the familiarity. That's why I said teams like the Giants, I feel like are going to really struggle. That's why I think that Brady and Tampa, they could potentially struggle because it's all new to Brady. But at the same time, all the reports, they seem to be that Brady's looking really good and his experience is really helping them with this. So who knows? Maybe Brady's going to be the outlier. But for a guy like Drew Lock, in this being his second year, this is his first year as the starter, they're being picked as one of the sleeper teams. They drafted Judy. Cortland Sutton is a really, really good young receiver for them. I think that losing Jawan James is going to seriously impact Drew Lock's play. He's not really a mobile guy. Just because he's young doesn't mean he's mobile. Does he have fresher legs than some other guys like a Matt Ryan? Sure. Is he probably faster than Matt Ryan? Yeah, probably. But is he Russell, Mahomes, Lamar, any of those guys? No, he's not. He does not have that kind of mobility. So I do think that is going to be a bigger deal. At number 2, I have Dante Hightower of the Patriots. Dante Hightower, over the last couple seasons, his grades haven't been that great by Pro Football Focus, but you look at his grades before that, this guy was he's been an elite to solid upper echelon starting middle linebackers in this league. Obviously, dealt with an injury, I think 2 seasons ago. That was a pretty big one, took him out for the season. Obviously he has been trying to come back from that. Maybe he's just been a bit slow. This last season, though, was up from his previous 2 years. Dante Hightower, he's one of the smart New England linebackers. He's one of the smart New England players. He's the guy who made the game-changing play in that Super Bowl against the Falcons. When he knocked I think he's the one who knocked the ball out of Matt Ryan's hands for the sack. Instead of just going for Matt Ryan, he went for the ball and knocked it out. Dont'a Hightower is a big piece to this New England defense. Obviously, they offered him an extension. He did try to survey the land, try and see if he could get a contract somewhere else, but he couldn't. So he stayed with New England, and he is now he is one of the captains of this defense who was now gone. While the secondary has stayed intact, their defensive line hasn't, their linebacking core hasn't, and you already lose Kyle Van Noy and Jamie Collins, two of your other and Landon Roberts, and you lose Dont'a Hightower for the season. I think that's a big deal. I don't know exactly what to expect from this Patriots defense. I think it would almost be ridiculous if this was any other team. If the head coach was anyone other than Bill Belichick, I think that people would say it's ridiculous to think that this team is going to be good. But because it's Bill Belichick, people still have the thought in their mind that this team should be good. Losing all these guys, I honestly don't know. I really, really don't know how this team's going to perform. But Hightower is an underrated player. I think he's really underappreciated. I think he was the 15th best linebacker in the NFL this past season. He's a good player, and the Patriots have lost him for the year. At number 1, I have Michael Pierce of the Vikings. The Vikings defensive line, as it stands right now, is basically Danielle Hunter and a bunch of guys. I honestly don't even know who they don't have Everson Griffin anymore. He's gone. They don't have Linval Joseph. He's gone. Obviously, Sheldon Richardson, he went over to the Browns the past season, so he's gone. It's Danielle Hunter and guys. Michael Pierce was supposed to be a huge addition for them. Michael Pierce, I think he had some weight issues in Baltimore. They kind of got on him about that because Michael Pierce is a bigger guy, but he's also a D tackle, so you do want him to be bigger, but I guess he was a little bit bigger than bigger. But Michael Pierce, since he entered the league, is I think a top 10 run stuffer. He's he's one of the top defensive tackles in the league since he came in, and he is gone. I think he's gone for health reasons. So again, obviously not gonna fight him on that, but I mean, Seattle is a team that really couldn't afford to have any opt-outs, especially on their defensive line, because they have been graded by Pro Football Focus as the worst defensive line in the league, and with I think the only thing that's keeping the Vikings from being worse than Seattle is the fact that they at least have Danielle Hunter. If they didn't have Danielle Hunter, they would by far and away be competing with Seattle to be the worst defensive line in football. And so, Michael Pierce is supposed to be a big addition for that team because he's going to at least get a double block in the middle, and he is now gone for the season, and that's going to be a real big blow to their pass rush. Their pass rush now, outside of Hunter, is gone. They do like to send other blitzes, obviously with a Harrison Smith. He's a great blitzing linebacker. They like to send Eric Kendricks or Anthony Barr on the blitz. So obviously they always bring up, you can scheme pressure. It's the coverage that you more can't scheme. You need to worry about the coverage more. I do like that philosophy of spending on the back end, more scheming pressure. But then again, it doesn't hurt to have a guy like a TJ Watt. It doesn't hurt to have a guy like a Chandler Jones that can consistently get to the quarterback. That doesn't hurt. So I do think that Michael Pierce is a big loss because the Vikings are still a team that can win right now. And they still have the quarterback. They got the same coach. I mean, everything for them is intact. Obviously, yes, they did lose Stephon Diggs, and that's going to be a big blow, but they also nailed their draft. But I look at their defensive side of the football, and their secondary has questions outside of safety. Their linebacking core is pretty good, and they got really one pass rusher. Nothing else. I think their defense could really let them down this year, while their offense, still intact, still has a good run game. I think that it could really let them down. So in order again to go through my list from 10 to number 1, I have Eddie Goldman, Marcus Gilbert, CJ Mosley, Nate Solder, Marquise Goodwin, Travis Benjamin, Marcus Cannon, Jawan James, Dont'a Hightower, and Michael Pierce. Those are my 10 most impactful opt-outs of the offseason. Man. This is going to be such a strange season. I'm very, very intrigued to see how football looks, because I feel like there is a big chance that this season does get shortened, that there is a stoppage. I feel like it could just look really goofy on TV with there being no fans. I'm interested to see how they handle the fans. Obviously, baseball's done some stuff. The NBA obviously has been mixing in digital fans and everything like that, pumping in crowd noise as well as baseball. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this year looks. 2020 is one hell of a trip. Anyways, thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.